Hi everybody, it's Lela from Miss Kiss Creations. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am finally going to show you a pen tutorial. I know a lot of people have asked me and messaged me for a pen tutorial, so here it is. Before I go over all of my materials, I do want to let y'all know that there will be a giveaway announcement at the end of the video, so make sure you stay tuned until the end. I will be giving away not one, but two pen adapter kits with 6 clips and a saber from Imagination 3D. And that's not it. Each winner will win 6 pens to go along with their kits for them to customize. And don't worry, if you're not one of the lucky winners of these kits, I will be posting a coupon code in my description below for you to receive 5% off of your order from Imagination 3D. And if you have no idea what these things are or how to use them, of course I'm going to be using these in my pen tutorial that you are watching. So don't freak out. I'll explain everything on how to use these and what each part is good for. And of course, make sure you check out Imagination 3D shop. I will have their link posted in my description below. They have much more than just these pen adapters. And with all that being said, let's go ahead and get started with these pens. So this little thingy-majig is actually a drying rack. So what we have these little holders for the pens. So whenever you take apart the pens, you can fit the pen into this holder like so. Then whenever you go to spray paint the pens, you have what we call a saber to hold the extension of the pen so you don't have to be so close spray painting or glittering your pens. So this little gadget right here makes things a lot easier whenever you're working with these small pens. And then you have your drying rack. You can remove the saber and place your pen here on the drying rack for it to dry. And you can see there's 9 little honeycomb areas that you can add your pens in the slots. And then we have the pen holder, so whenever you actually go to epoxy your pens, because you know that we have to epoxy these like tumblers, and if you don't let the pens rotate on your cup turner, then the epoxy is just going to drip down. So this is what comes with the adapter. You're going to see this honeycomb, and then you're going to see the round spot in the middle. So what you do is you unscrew this little screw on the side, and then you place your pipe inside of this hole. The size pipe that this fits is a 1/2 inch pipe. So this is my 1/2 inch pipe. You remove the screw and then you place the 1/2 inch pipe inside of the hole. So what I actually did was I took my Allen wrench and then I unscrewed this screw. Once I had the screw removed from the adapter, I just left it out of the adapter. Then I took my Gorilla Glue, and side note, this is the only Gorilla Glue that I use for any of my cup turners. And then what I did was I just placed my Gorilla Glue and the inside of this hole, placed some on the pipe, and then just added it on the pipe like so. And then I just sat it upright, and then it super glued on. I think it probably takes 20 to 25 minutes to dry. Once you've done that, you should have something that looks like this. The one that I have is actually a 3/4 inch pipe, and the one that I just showed y'all is 1/2 inch pipe. So I know you can purchase either one depending on which pipe you guys work with your pens. All right, so let's rewind a little bit. We are going to talk about these pens. The pens that I'm using, you can also purchase from Imagination 3D. They're the Papermate Ink Joy Gel 0.07. So these are all the pens, and Imagination 3D actually has other pens. I know he has some colorful pens on there, so be sure to check out his website. I'll be creating 5 pens today, numerous amounts of designs I'm going to try with y'all. The first step is going to be breaking down these pens. A little side note, if you have 12 pens, don't break down all 12 pens. Make sure you leave 1 pen to the side, because when you go to put together the pens, you might forget how to put the insides back inside of the pen. And if you don't understand what I'm saying now, I'll show y'all towards the end whenever I put together the pens again. So we're going to take apart these pens. So just like you would, make sure you have a container. And I know Imagination 3D, he has a tray available for the pens so you can organize them. But what I'm doing is I just have a little tray that I've had, and I just have all of my pens in here and all the insides in here. You can also place them in a plastic bag or anywhere that you feel safe, in a box or anything. So we're going to unscrew the top of the pen. Going to take the insides, the ink out, and then that little pushy thingy on the top should come out as well. You saw the little silver piece, plastic piece come out. So all of the insides are inside of my little blue container, and you can see there's a hole inside of the pen. So what we're going to do next is take off this little clip. We want to remove that, and the way that I remove this is using a pair of pliers. I have my needle nose pliers, and I just take this and I clamp it, and all I do is break it. So you can see how this is already starting to break off, and I just twist it right off. You can probably do this with your hands, but I'd rather not hurt myself and just use a pair of needle nose pliers. And it comes right off. You're going to throw away the clip, that plastic piece. You do not need that. And then you should see a little pokey area where the excess of that clip stayed on the pen. So I'm going to do this with all of my pens. Fast forward through this part, and then we'll move on with the next step. All of the guts from my pens are removed, and now for my next step, I am going to be sanding off that little part of the top of the pen that is still remaining. I know there's a lot of ways to do this, but what I found easiest is using a little nail filer that I purchased from Amazon. I will be linking this in my description below. If you do have like a Dremel or like maybe a mini Dremel, you can also use that. And I know people are using just sanding paper or sanding block. I just found this easier. Y'all know I absolutely hate sanding, so this was the easiest way to do this. I'm going to be sanding not only this part, but I'm going to be sanding the entire pen, including this rough area. I don't sand this area too much because you're going to notice it kind of flake up, and then the pen might be a little bumpy, but I do put the nail filer over it just a little bit, and I try to sand away these two little hearts up here, because if you feel it's a little raised up here, and I just want it to be one solid smooth pen. I believe this filer was probably $15 to maybe $20 off of Amazon. So what I'm doing now is I'm just focusing on the top of the pen. And this filer, it's made for nails. It's not made for any hardware stuff. So sometimes I do press down too hard. So just you just have to just get the hang of it. And this filer does have different speeds. The head that I'm using is just the regular head that it comes with. I think it like comes with maybe 20 of these heads. And it might come with like other little special heads, but I don't really need any of that stuff. So you're going to see this stuff go everywhere. That's okay. I'm going to do the first pen, and then once I'm finished with this pen, I'll go ahead and fast forward through the other pens. So the best way I do this is just focusing on this little area, that groove, as much as I can, and you're going to eventually feel that groove go down. So what I'm doing is I'm turning up the, I guess, the speed of the nail filer just to make it go a little faster, and I just feel around the area and you won't even notice that it's there. There's also a little bump just below that area. I just sand that away as well. And then I make sure I sand the plastic part very well. And you can always tell which area you've sanded because it goes from being very smooth to rough. Then I'm going to turn it down again, not all the way down, just like towards the middle, and then go with the sanding on that rubber part. Don't try to sand too much around the top, but you do want to sand it, but you don't want to kind of grind it away. When I did my first pen, I kind of grinded it away, and you can notice it. I'll show y'all here soon. So you just want just a quick sanding over the rubber part. The reason why I sand the rubber part is just like a tumbler. You want that spray paint, you want the epoxy to have something to stick to. Spray paints, epoxies, they like to stick to more rough, flat surfaces than smooth surfaces. So I know some people, they don't sand the rubber part, but I'd rather be safe than sorry. I have my first pen sanded and I'm going to fast forward with the other pens. All of my pens are now sanded and you can see how they look. So your pens are going to look really dull and you're going to see, especially on the rubber part or that rough area that's not plastic, you're going to see little pieces kind of sticking up. Don't worry about that. It's not going to affect your design. It's not going to make it lumpy or anything. So what I'm going to do now is, just like tumblers, you're going to move on with using 91% alcohol and wiping these down. So this is all part of the prepping process. The easiest way I found doing this was just putting my 91% alcohol inside of my spray bottle. I have a paper towel. I cut it in thirds. I placed a protector on my desk and I'm just going to spray these pens like so and roll them as I spray them. Instead of wiping each one down individually at first, I just spray them all and I make sure I spray them and drench them with the alcohol. I'd rather spray too much alcohol than too little. So all I'm doing is rolling them back and forth. Now I'm going to take my paper towel and just kind of wipe them down. Once I'm finished wiping them down, I'm going to take my adapter of each pen. I'm going to be placing the pen inside of the adapter. And I did miss a step. I am so sorry. What I'm going to be doing first before I put the pen in the adapter is I'm going to be taking some petroleum jelly. So I have this here. And then I'm going to take the adapter and just place petroleum jelly on the adapter like so. So I am using all these adapters and I'm just going to place the petroleum jelly on the adapters before I place the pen on the adapter. I'm doing this now because I might forget in the future. So if I remember to do it before I forget, I'd rather do it now than later. So you can do this later. The reason why I'm putting this petroleum jelly on the plastic adapter is because if I were to get epoxy on these adapters, then the epoxy will repel and epoxy does not stick to petroleum jelly. So I basically drench the petroleum jelly on it and it gets everywhere, but I'd rather have too much than too little. I make sure I get this little top area because sometimes you'll place that pen all the way down and it might get stuck. So you might have that epoxy run down and you don't want your pen getting stuck to these plastic adapters because it's probably impossible or very hard. I wouldn't say impossible, but it's very hard to get the pen removed from the adapter. Now that I have the petroleum jelly on the adapter, that's when I'm going to slide my pen onto the adapter. Make sure you are washing your hands or you are not touching the hand that has the petroleum jelly on those pens, because you don't want any petroleum jelly on the pen because, like I said, the petroleum jelly is what repels that epoxy. So make sure you just go and just wash your hands with soap and water and that should remove that. All of my pens are on the adapter and now for the next step is going to be spray painting. So this is going to be just like spray painting your tumbler. I'm going to take it outside. I'm going to spray paint it. There's really no easy way to spray paint these pens without wasting too much spray paint. So what I do is I'm just going to spray paint around the bottom, around the top, and then around the sides. So I'm going to go my spray paint up around the bottom like so, circular, and then on the top like so, and then come in the middle and then spray paint that way. That's how I spray paint them. So I will be using various amounts of colors, so I will have all of my colors in my description below. And remember, whenever I'm taking these outside to spray paint them, I'm taking my extension and I'm holding it like so, and then I'm spray painting. Once I'm done spray painting, I'm going to take my drying rack and take my extension off of my clip and then place the clip inside of the drying rack like so. So you just place them in the honeycombs, as I like to say, and you just let them dry like you would your tumblers. So I'm gonna go spray paint these pens, let them dry, and I'll see y'all soon. So I have all of my pens here on the drying rack. I have spray painted them all. You can see all of them are nice and spray painted. I just wanted to be clear with this drying rack. Whenever you put the pens on here, make sure that they click on the bottom. So there's like a little lip on here. A lot of times I want to place them on like this, and it should be clipped, and make sure you get that lip and click them on the bottom so they won't go anywhere. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be glittering a couple of the pens, and then I'm going to be doing my alcohol ink method on the other pens. So I'm first going to apply the alcohol ink method, and then I will be glittering them. So I'm gonna set up my station, and then I'll see y'all soon. All right guys, so I have my two pens here, my two black ones. I'm going to be applying my alcohol inks to it. I'm first going to be applying just a thin coat of epoxy. And remember, I do have my Vaseline on my my little adapter or holder. So make sure you added that Vaseline or petroleum jelly on your holder. And remember, the reason why I add that is because the epoxy will repel and it won't stick to that Vaseline. So if I get epoxy on that green stick now, that Vaseline isn't going to allow that epoxy to stick, so I can remove that pen. So what I'm going to start doing now is, once I have my thin coat of epoxy on my pens, I'm going to turn on my cup turner and then add more epoxy to the pens. This is when it becomes a little bit more, I should say, difficult. Not really difficult, but you know, you have two pens and you have your turner going. So make sure you're just kind of going back and forth. This is how I do it. I just hold it kind of at the tip, and then I just allow my turner to spin. And I don't chase my turner. I just let them spin until they come back around. So I'm not gonna chase the pens around. And any areas that you might feel that's kind of bumpy, that you didn't lay the epoxy down properly, or you didn't lay it down smoothly, I should say, with the pens rotating, it should level out. So I make sure I just get all around, and I can see a part where I don't have any epoxy on. And then I'm just going to take my time and just allow the pens to spin. So just like a tumbler, you want to make sure your epoxy is laid on the pens, you know, smooth. So you want to just kind of keep taking your finger and just going back and forth with that. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my heat gun. I'm going to apply a little bit of heat to my pens. This just allows the epoxy to kind of open up some, loosen up some, and just kind of lay more flat on the turners, or I'm sorry, on the pens. So now I have my two alcohol inks I'll be using. One, it's going to be Wild Plum, and one's going to be Watermelon. I'm just going to add the colors on the pens like I would a tumbler. And then I'm going to do my Watermelon, and I'm going to apply that to my other pen. So I'm doing one pen one color and the other pen another color. And I'm making sure I'm not adding this alcohol ink to the pens while my pens are up high. So I'm making sure that it's below that other pen so I don't accidentally drip on that other pen. Now I'm going to go in with my white from Pinata, and I'm going to be applying my white to these pens. So I'm just going to add one little drip at a time. And now for this, I can add this anywhere on the pens because I'm going to be adding white to both. So if I accidentally have that white drip on the other one, then so be it, let it drip, because it's gonna drip to the other design. For my next step, I'm going to turn off my cup turner, and then I'm going to remove my pen from the adapter, and I'm just going to let that pen kind of fall up and down. So while I have this on the adapter, what I can do off the adapter, what I can do is add more of those colors to the pens and then add more white. And you can see these kind of dripping. You're going to see a kind of cool effect. And then I'm going to take my heat gun and apply some heat. You can see that cool effect's already starting to happen on these pens. I'm trying to get it in the camera for y'all and still make a cute pen. You can see all those little swirls on there. The white's taking over. I'm going to place this back in the pen holder, and then I'm going to remove the other pen, and I'm going to be doing the same thing. So I'm going to be adding my watermelon color. I'm going to add the watermelon color over the pens, add more of that. And then I'm going to go in and add more white. Once I add more white, I'm going to take my heat gun and apply a little bit of heat. And you'll see the colors kind of swirl together. If your epoxy is dripping, let your epoxy drip. Don't worry about it too much. I just let it drip right off the pen. I don't worry about it because it makes a cool little dripping effect. Whenever you apply that little bit of heat, you can see those colors really changing. And now I'm going to add my pen back onto my adapter and make sure it's locked in place. And I'll get a better picture once the epoxy has cured, but I'm trying to zoom up so y'all can see these cool little designs that I've created. So I have that wild plum and then I have that watermelon color. So I'm going to let them spin just like as I would a tumbler. I'm going to allow them to spin for about 4 to 5 hours. After about 4 to 5 hours, I'm going to turn off my cup turner and let them air dry or air cure for another 20 hours or so, because I'm gonna move on and place a decal on these pens. Are now on the pen turner, and again, make sure all of the pens are locked into this adapter. You want to be able to hear that click. If you do not hear that click, then your pens are not properly secured and they might fall off the turner. So I do want to let y'all know one thing. If you do want to have 2 of these adapters, maybe one adapter for your pens with glitter and then the other adapter pens without glitter, because I am sure that these 2 pens without the glitter will most likely have some glitter on them by the time I am finished with these pens. But since I'm just making these pens for fun and they're not custom orders, I'm not too worried about it. So I'm going to allow these pens to spin on the cup turner for about 4 hours. Once they're finished spinning, I'm going to leave the 2 that do not have glitter on them just air curing on my drying rack. All of the ones that are glittered, I'm then going to go in with a second coat of epoxy like I would tumblers and put that epoxy over these pens. So I'm gonna let them spin, let them air cure, and I'll see y'all soon. Okay, let's move on to epoxying. If I sound funny, it's because I have my face mask on. Now I'm going to show you how I epoxy over the decals. I'm going to do a couple with y'all. I'm not going to bore y'all with a lot. So I'm going to start with this lovely pen that has my name on it. And I'm going to be placing the saber inside of the pen. So if I were to do this off camera, I would not epoxy over the pens. I would put this on another turner and then use this space to epoxy over the pens. But I just need to show y'all how I do this. So I'm just going to be taking, just like how I did before, I'm going to be putting my finger inside of my Dixie cup, and then I'm just going to be putting the epoxy over each pen. So now for this layer of epoxy, you want it to be thicker. You don't want that thin layer this time, so you want a very thick coat. So what I do is I make sure that I layer the first coat of epoxy like this, and I don't put on too much initially. I'm not going to put on too much while I have it in my hand, because if I put on a lot of epoxy right now, as y'all know, that gravity is going to take over and the epoxy is going to fall right down. So I just put on that initial coat. I just want that pen to be nice and covered, and then I take it off my saber and then I place it on the turner. Once I've placed my first pen on the adapter, make sure that's in there. Make sure you hear that click. Once I place my pen on the adapter, I make sure my pen is even, meaning I make sure that it's straight, it's not sticking up. So I want to make sure this is going to be parallel to the ground. Once I put my first pen on there, I take off my second pen, and then that's when I turn on my cup turner, because that epoxy is wet and it's going to start dripping if you do not turn on the cup turner. I'm going to take my next pen, which is this lovely red and pink alcohol ink pen, and I'm going to be doing the same thing. So again, I'm just putting that first initial layer on, and then after I put that layer on, I forgot to put the saber on, I'm sorry. It's easier in the camera when I hold it like this, but I usually use this stick, the saber, to hold it, but just to get y'all in the frame here. And then now I'm going to take this and I'm going to let the turner turn, put it back on the adapter, and then have my pen rotate. So I'm going to go ahead and finish the rest of the pens. I'm going to put that first layer on, and then I'll return to add more epoxy on the tumblers. I now have my first coat of epoxy on my pens. So what I do now is I just add randomly more epoxy on my pens. So I'm doing this like it's one big pen, but I'm adding a little bit of epoxy to each pen. So as I'm adding it, the pens are not going to drip, so the epoxy is going to stay on the pens. So this is how I do this. If you want to just do all the epoxy on the pen while it's still like in the air, you can. So as I'm adding the epoxy, I'm making sure that I'm hitting those decals, because those decals is what needs to be sealed in, and you don't want those decals to kind of peek through. When I'm finished epoxying my pens, I'm going to allow them to spin on the cup turner for about 4 to 5 hours. After 4 to 5 hours, I'm going to let them air dry or air cure by turning off my cup turner and letting them just sit. I will do that for about 20 hours, so I want a full drying or air curing time for 24 hours. After 24 hours, that's whenever I'll clean up the pens and I'll put everything together and your pens will be complete. So I'm going to let these pens turn, air dry or air cure, and then I'll be back with the next step. Welcome back, everybody. My pens have been air curing or drying for at least 24 hours. So now I am going to remove them from their adapters. Now remember, I still had that petroleum jelly on the adapters, so none of the pens should have stuck to the plastic. And I have all of my pens right here, and we are almost finished with this process. I just want to mention one thing. I know applying the epoxy to the pens is a little tedious. So a lot of times, I know for me, sometimes I don't put enough epoxy on the pens to cover up the decals. So if you don't put enough epoxy for that first layer, then you can just go ahead and just re-epoxy again over what you already epoxied. So do not get discouraged if you don't put a lot of epoxy on your pens. Just put another coat of epoxy over and it should be fine, and then you will move on to the next step where I'm going to show y'all. For one of my last steps, I'm going to clean up the inside of the pen, and then I will put the pen together. I'm just taking this pen and I'm making sure all of that epoxy is out of the inside. So I'm using my X-Acto knife again, and I'm just going on the inside of the pen, and I'm making sure there's no epoxy. I don't see any on here, but the final test is whenever you go to put the pens together. So again, I'm looking on the inside. If I see any epoxy on the inside, I'm just going to kind of poke it and get it out. This is very similar to whenever you are doing your tumbler cleanup on the inside. And then I want to make sure I do the opposite side as well. So I'm going to roll through these, and then I'll move on with the next step. All of my pens are now cleaned out, all the epoxy's removed, and now I will be putting the pens back together. Now, I don't know if you remembered from what I said in the beginning, but make sure you have one pen that is still put together, only because you might just forget how to put these pens back together, and you might just forget where the parts go. So I always keep one put together just in case I do forget. I can just take this apart and then get all the insides out. I'll do that for y'all. I'll go through it that way first, and then I'll put the rest together. If you notice I still have my X-Acto knife out, it's because a lot of times you think you've removed all of your epoxy from your pens, or you think you've cleaned them up all the way. Then you go to put together your pens and you realize, uh-oh, there's still epoxy in my pens. So if that does happen, just use your X-Acto knife to clean it up more. So let's start with, of course, my favorite pen with my name on it. So I'm going to put the outside of the pen out, and then what I'm going to do is take my pen that's put together, and each piece is going to be accounted for with the other piece of pen. So if that doesn't make sense, just watch. So now I have this piece, so I'm going to go in my box, and I'm gonna make sure I have the tip. I'm going to remove the inside. I'm gonna make sure I have the spring and the ink, so I have that. And then the silver piece on the top, I have that piece, and then I don't know if you can see inside of there, but it's that black plastic piece. The one thing that usually gets people is how the black piece and the silver piece connects together. So when I remove it, I just keep it like this, and you could see how it's connected like so. I'm just going to take that and put these two together. Now, like I said, Imagination 3D, he has all of the different compartments, so you don't have to think, okay, do I have this piece or I have this piece? All of the compartments or all of the spaces on the tray is all, so each piece has its own little spot on the tray. So it is amazing, so you don't have to take apart the pen to make sure you have all of your pieces. So now I'm going to just put this pen back together the same way how I remove the insides of this pen. So this is the smaller side, and I'm just going to place that black and silver piece back down. And if you notice, the silver piece isn't going to go down. And that's because the silver piece, when I try to put it down, it's not going down all the way. There's two reasons. Either it just needs a little extra push, or there's still epoxy in there, and so it's not going to go in properly. So what I do is I still go with the motions. So I still put the pen guts back together, because sometimes putting that ink in there, it pushes that silver piece in. And then I'm going to just screw it back on. And then the way that I test it is I just click it. So you see it just needed to just get a little extra force on there. So thankfully I removed all of the epoxy. So this pen is now all put together and it clicks. So you want to make sure you still have that same click. And I know a lot of times people overthink. So just take another pen that's put together and just click them at the same time. If it has the same resistance, then it's fine. And now for my next pen, I'm going to do the same thing. So I have my black piece and my silver piece together. I have the smaller end pointed down towards the desk. The piece didn't come through all the way. So again, that might mean I have epoxy down there, or I just need that extra force. So I'm going to push that in, and you can see that silver piece just comes right through the top. And now I'm going to screw on the pen cap, and then I'm going to click. Now you notice this one doesn't click. something is wrong with the way I either put in the guts or there's epoxy stuck somewhere and it's not going to allow it to click properly. So since this is happening, I'm going to figure out with y'all on camera, just in case this problem is happening with y'all as well. So let's take apart the pen together. So what I do first is I take my light and I kind of try to see if I have some epoxy left in there, and I don't see any, so I'm just going to take my X-Acto knife again and just kind of try to clean up what I might see. There was some epoxy right there. So just a little amount of epoxy, it will affect the way that your pen sits. And yeah, since this pen is black, there's epoxy coming right off. You could see I just had some epoxy in there that I did not clean up when I cleaned it up initially. So I'm going to remove this epoxy from the inside and then we'll put the pen back together. Okay, so let's do this again. So we have the big side facing up and the small side facing down. And that time, that silver part went right in. And then now I'm going to put the ink in with the spring and then put the top back on and screw that on. And now we're going to do the final test. And there it goes, clicking. And again, I'm going to take a pen that hasn't been taken apart and I'm just going to click them side by side to make sure they have the same resistance. So I'm going to finish up the last 4 pens and then I will show you the final results. Guys, all of my pens are finished and all of them turned out just beautiful. You can see the alcohol inks. The glitter is from Glitter Heart Co. So of course you know it's gorgeous. So I'm sure all of y'all are wondering about the giveaway. To get entered in my giveaway, what you'll do is send me a private message on my Instagram or Facebook page and let me know which pen is your favorite. You'll then receive an emoji back and that's how you know that you're entered. You can find my Instagram or Facebook page in my description below. I will also have a date posted in my description below to let y'all know when I'll announce the winners for the giveaway. Both of my winners will be posted on my Instagram and Facebook page, so be sure to keep an eye out for that post. I would like to say thank you to Imagination 3D for donating the materials for this amazing giveaway. And like always, thank you so much for watching. I hope this video helped you, and be sure to like and subscribe to my channel for more Tumblr and craft videos. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.